Hey there! Welcome to SkyGems Academy podcast. At SkyGems Academy, our vision is to build a community of new generation leaders with strong core values, high level of self-awareness, high self-worth, and passionate individuals who will give back to the community and the environment. We are focused on delivering high-quality blended online learning of 21st century life skills delivered and taught online, practiced and perfected offline. Our philosophy is to inspire, educate, and nurture. We work towards inspiring and igniting sparks. We listen, we coach, we fine-tune and accelerate the mastery of 21st century life skills for various age groups. Our blended learning programs are curated from the early years to above 60 years old, as we believe in providing high-quality, lifelong learning for everyone. SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1: How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry. We will take you inside the minds and behind the scenes of 40 exclusive leaders and educators in the education industry. We've interviewed 40 exclusive educators and leaders in the education industry worldwide, starting with China, where the pandemic initially started. You will hear from the leaders in the education industry sharing candidly their views on the possible changes that will take place in the education industry post-COVID-19. Be sure to tune in to SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 to listen and learn from the amazing stories, experiences shared, challenges faced, and techniques used by educators in different cities and countries to adapt and overcome their challenges personally as well as professionally in their respective roles in the education industry during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's dive into SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1. Introducing to you our host, Alyssa.
Hey guys, it's Alyssa. Hope everyone is keeping well. SkyGems Academy Podcast is a passion project that my team and I kicked off in early 2020. As we are all facing the unprecedented events and experiences impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, we find that there is an urgent need to unite the global community of educators and leaders to progress forward together. Our main objective is to create a platform for all global leaders and global communities to come together to document these historic moments for our future generations. SkyGems Academy Podcast is a platform for everyone from all around the world to share, listen, learn, communicate, collaborate, and come together to network and help one another to pull through this very challenging period that has impacted the global community. In each episode of SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1, How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry, you will find yourself immersed and engaged in in-depth discussions and thought leadership in various aspects of education, technology, humanity, diversity, disparity, and collaborations in the education space. We are very grateful and sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who has motivated us, encouraged us, contributed in your own very special ways, especially our 40 exclusive guest speakers from all around the world. A big thank you to all and a big shout out to all of you. SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 on the topic of how COVID-19 transformed the education industry final 40th speaker is Margarita Lukavenko. Margarita is a passionate educator and founder of EduMatters and EduHarbor, where she develops a global community of educators via an online platform and works on providing global quality education solutions through an online global competence project where students design games that are sent for free to communities in need all over the world. Margarita is a UN Teach SDGs Ambassador, Sustainable Development Goals, and a National Geographic Certified Educator. We need to have mental agility. No matter how good you are at it, you have to keep on improving it. and keep on adjusting yourself. You need to keep your balance and keep finding your balance, said Margarita. Now I'm pleased to present to you Margarita Lukavenko. Today, we have the honor and pleasure to have our 40th speaker, a very distinguished and exclusive speaker, all the way from Sakhalin Island, Russia. And she is Margarita Lukavenko. Hi, Margarita. A very good morning to you. Welcome to SkyGems podcast.
Hi, thanks. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Margarita. We are so happy to have you as our final speaker in Series 1, How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry for SkyGems podcast. We are so excited to have you as our finale for this Series 1, and we are so honored. Thank you so much for your time and also your generosity.
It's my pleasure. It's also a very important topic right now, so I'm happy
Absolutely.
to be a part of it.
Thank you, Margarita. Margarita, why don't you go ahead and say hi to the listeners and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Margarita Lukavenko. I come from the far east of Russia, and I'm currently in Berlin, in Germany. I'm an educator. I'm a founder of EduMatters and EduHubber, which is a global community of educators. We started to develop and grow in Shanghai, China. And then later on, we started to take it further outside of China, outside of WeChat, to develop a global community of educators. As well as we also focus on kids and teenagers development. We develop global competence skills through our online projects. So this project is quite unique because it connects the world where internet is a norm and where there is no internet yet, and kids design some kind of activities and games that we send for free to communities around the world that don't have the luxury of purchasing materials or even the internet itself. And as a Teach SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals ambassador, I also focus a lot on the SDGs, these goals, and implement them in all my projects along the way.
Wow. Margarita, thank you for sharing that really very rich experience and also very rich in-depth details of education industry that you're going into many different areas and also different age groups. So thank you for that.
Sure, my pleasure. I mean, we can talk about this a lot more. The topic for today,
I can imagine.
Unfortunately, is not education.
I can imagine, yes. I'm sure we will have another session for our podcast series on SkyGems that we will talk on different areas of education, and definitely welcome you to be our special guest speakers in our SkyGems
thank
podcast. Thank you, Margarita. So, Margarita, in this current situation that we are in, as we discussed earlier, it is a very challenging period for everyone across the globe. How do you feel?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you feel about the current COVID-19 pandemic situation?
Well, it's a very good question, actually. I have a mix of feelings about it. And the first thought that comes to my mind is not actually how do I feel about it, but more of, it's happening, it's a fact. And it's proven that COVID-19 exists, unlike a lot of people still think and say on social media especially. So this is the new norm already, right? I'm pretty sure we'll talk about the new norm as well during this podcast. But what we're going through right now is new for everybody, as well as for me, a person who has moved from China to Germany just around 9 months ago. And when we were actually hitting this wave of COVID-19 in Germany, we were just making the move from Hamburg to Berlin.
Wow.
And this was a permanent move. We were going to settle down in Berlin, which we have done. But the move itself was, it went well by itself. But as soon as we got here, about a week or two afterwards, this wave hit Germany and we had to stay at home. And we had to, we were renting an apartment, which was short term. So we had to find a permanent apartment. And my husband just started a new job in a company based in Berlin and UK. So he was supposed to travel a lot. So there were a lot of those little life changes that we had to adapt to. So I have this mix of feelings towards COVID-19 because it also was during the period of time when my family was changing countries and cultures. Yeah. And neither I or my husband come from Germany. So it was the first time for us to live in this country. And it was quite a challenging time. But overall, this whole experience and taking care of our health and making sure that everyone around us is safe as well, inability to go out and attend some particular events we were planning to make friends, all that together is just, it's just the way it is. It was not easy. It continues to not be exactly what we all want to go through. Yes. In the new city, especially in the country. And even if we weren't moving, I'm sure it would be quite similar. But yeah, it's a mix of emotions.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Really so much going through during that period of time. And I'm sure still going through some of it now that you and your family has gone through. Thank you for being so open and transparent. And I believe most of us are also going through similar, if not some sort of same kind of feeling, some even more challenges. And depending where we are, it is a tough one for everyone. So it's Absolutely. Good to share this so that we know that we are not alone, that's for sure. It's just that we hear from different community, different people having different types of challenges, and we know then that, okay, when we are here, we feel this way, or when we are in another location, there's a different sets of challenges. So it's really nice to share that. I myself, as I shared earlier, have gone through roller coasters of feelings throughout the pandemic. And in Singapore, we started way much earlier in January, and that was Chinese New Year. Wow, it was like first day of Chinese New Year, and second day, it just hit all of us, and we all just stayed home since then. And we are still staying at home. Yes.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine how challenging that was, because I spent 7 years in China, and most of the Chinese New Year celebrations we were either in China or in Southeast Asia. Yes. And it's such a great, important period of celebrations with your family and friends. And this year, nobody was actually able to do that.
Yeah, we did it virtually most of the time, which is not not normal at all. But we tried. Yeah, we tried, as you say, we tried to adapt. We accept the situation that we are in and try to move along. I would say move along and progress rather than stuck in a rut where we can't move forward.
Right. I do think that it's a process, right? We cannot just, we can say theoretically it's good to be relaxed and just go with the flow. But when this situation hit all of us, we could see through our life experiences and our friends. For me personally, I was keeping in touch with my close friends in China who were there. And before I could go through what they were going through what you were going through as well in Singapore, I was listening to their stories, and I was trying to support them while we were still living the old norm life back in Hamburg. And it was very challenging for them. And then later on, the same thing hit us. And that's when you realize, no matter what you say, of course, it's important to keep in touch and have the support of friends and family, but it doesn't matter what theory or approaches you decide to have until you actually have this situation, that you live through it and you experience all this and you decide to do to have a certain approach, to do certain things to make your life better and adapt. That's when the actual change happens.
Yeah, that's true. I truly believe in that, and I agree with you completely. So thanks, Margarita, for sharing that level of detail. Margarita, you mentioned that clearly you have gone through quite a bit of challenges during this period, settling down in a new country and a new city. Could you share with us some of the challenges that you faced during this period, and what changes you make to adapt and also overcome those challenges?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting how this chain of challenges started. Because of COVID-19. When we just moved to Berlin, I had a flight already booked to Baku, Azerbaijan, for a conference. So I was going to speak at the IGF conference, which is the Internet Governance Forum for the youth of Baku. It was supposed to be an event for university students in Azerbaijan. So we had everything set up. And, even though we just moved to Berlin, in 2 days, I was flying already to Baku. And once we touched the ground in Baku, basically in a couple of hours, they told us that the government decided to cancel all the public events.
Wow.
So that was that was a hit for all of us, the speakers who flew. Some of us flew from Germany, some from other European countries. And even though it wasn't anything like a big problem for us. Of course, we started to take tours around the city. We just walked around, and we still had very good connection with the speakers and the organizers. We managed to meet despite all this uncertainty. But if you think about it, actually it was quite a challenging time looking back, right? You fly to another country, you are going for a conference, first time there, first time in the country where you're actually living as well, in a new city. So that was a very interesting start. So when I got back to Berlin, I was already kind of in the mode of, no matter what happens, we are going to be all right as long as we follow the regulations and we take care of our health, and we wear the masks and we wash our hands, because I had gone through 2 airports by that time, 2, 3, I think it was 3 airports actually. So that was my mindset from the start. And my husband was in Berlin at the time. He was still going to the office, and for him it was a little bit different because he hasn't gone through this international scene of how people start to wear masks and disinfect their hands everywhere. So after that, I would say that the challenges that came along for me personally as a person who works online, especially now that I've moved countries, some of the conferences that I was going to speak at and attend, they were either cancelled or moved online as well. So my challenge was to actually rearrange my own vision of how this new move to a new country, to a new city would be for me and for my family, professionally and personally. But apart from that, from this mental aspect, it was also a challenge of supporting and adapting to a fully online working environment. Even though I had been doing projects online before, I was never doing 100% work online. And here, where you see all these great organizers of the conferences and summits canceling their events and not being able to get the results from all the efforts they have already input in organizing. And I was just happy to support as much as I could with, online resources, or suggesting that certain things we can do differently online. So those were the work-related professional challenges, I would say, that came along our industry in general, and what I was doing at the time. And of course, from the point of view of education, schools and companies, training companies, were going through so many challenges. Again, I started to see all that in China, and then it slowly spread all over the world in the same situations. And I could see how schools were focused on dealing with this uncertain situation and trying to figure out what to do, how to maintain the workflow as usual in this new norm, and how to support their teachers as well. But at the same time, the projects that I was working on, they were kind of additional to those schools, right? So it gave me more uncertainty and more challenges to figure out how I should approach what I've been doing regularly in this new situation for the schools and for the education as well. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned about the what interests me is the online part. When in your day-to-day previously, you have already been doing a lot of online work, right? Collaboration, presentation, and basically things are done online. But of course, there's blended between online and face-to-face. But the COVID-19 has actually forced everyone to go online in a very short period of time. So in that situation, what are the major challenges that you face, and if there's any, right? And if there's any that you face, what are those and how do you overcome them?
So the challenges for the fully online work, right?
Yes.
Well, it was a transition of challenges. It started simply with questions from educators, from schools, from businesses, educational businesses, very kind of technical questions. Which platforms do we use? How do we make sure that the connection is good? How do we prepare online classes? And then from those questions that are quite easy to answer, it just takes time to adapt and some skill sets that any educator who is willing to develop can develop easily. It switched to more of how do we support our educators? How do we support our parents? How do we support our kids? So from this technical aspect, it went into this kind of mental support system that suddenly came to this point where people realize it's really important to focus not only on the physical aspects of, how do we do this, but actually also how do we implement this new school system, if we're talking about kids and parents, into our daily life, right? Or if we're talking about teachers, they got even more workload, working online. They had to educate themselves on the technology. They had to also work from home, where most of the teachers have their own kids as well. So this mix of environments, and also how do you set your own space in where you are at home, right? How do you rearrange everything? Had to be rearranged. So this question of support, mental health support, just emotional support, became suddenly very important. At the same time, this is all about countries where having internet in a regular household is a norm, right? If we look at the countries or regions of a lot of countries, majority of the countries where there is no access to the internet, or there is access but it's very expensive, or maybe there is a lack of devices in the family, so there is only one phone or one computer. And these kind of families, they had an issue of how do we actually continue educating our kids if there is no access to the main tool that people are using now for education. So there is this difference between developed countries, developing countries, or developed regions and developing regions in certain countries. So I would say that COVID-19 actually raised and highlighted so many issues that exist in the education world, specifically if we're focusing on that, of course, in other areas of life too.
Yeah, I think it's really forces to acknowledge, right? It always has been there. I think the acknowledgement or the awareness may not be as high, but now it really surface and highlight those key facts that we need to really address, and pay attention to. You're right. Wow. Thank you. I really enjoyed that discussion. Thank you so much. And I truly believe the support that you mentioned for mental health and emotional health is critical. And it's really about empathy and compassion, humanity in us to really come together and help one another during these very challenging times.
Yes, and the word that you mentioned, the empathy, the skill of empathy, it's actually one of those skills that educators usually don't really have a specific guideline on how to develop, right? There is no specific thing you can do to develop empathy. There has to be a set of approaches in order for your students, for your children to become empathetic. And it's a very long process. So with the COVID-19, I would say that it helps a little bit with the schools and the teachers to actually, highlight, and also for themselves also to understand that, hey, this is actually important. And if we develop empathy, we will also, maybe it will be easier to explain to kids why it's important to wear a mask or to disinfect your hands, so that you don't let the person next to you who's older or in a risk group, or just any person next to you to get the virus if you have it and your body is immune, right?
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So I think empathy, now that is being highlighted as a critical area, I think, as you say, it takes time to develop this skill. So really really good that we all put our hands together and come together to work towards having this empathy built in and values into our learners, as well as in fact everyone in the community.
Absolutely. And actually, as a way to support mental health and emotional, just to give emotional support to teenagers, we had to start a certain kind of mini project online as well. We called it Global Teens Meetups. And these Global Teens Meetups were just formed because some parents were asking for a regular, get together for kids where they could just chat and learn something interesting, specifically because for them, this whole situation in all areas of life is so new. Like, it's new for us, right? But we have been through so many things if we're talking about adults. But for teenagers, they're going through so many things by themselves just because their minds are changing, their bodies are changing, school, friends, exams, and now they also have to change the way they live. So it's an absolutely different way of challenges for them that we cannot grasp fully as adults, but we can understand theoretically and find ways to support them throughout this period. So that's exactly what we did specifically, just open up a free meetup space that we were running once or twice, every 1 or 2 weeks. And we got quite a lot of students joining from all over the world, and they would just join in, they would share a few words, and we would play some games and just talk about the feelings in a fun way, so they don't feel like it's a psychological support, but they have fun, and they also discover how they are feeling, and they also make friends. So we found that these simple approaches can make a big difference.
Oh, that's so beautiful, and I love it. This platform that you created for the teenagers to come together all across the world is so powerful in helping so many of us, right? Not just the teenagers, but also the parents and the adults to actually understand that this is actually all about coming together and helping one another lift ourselves, lift the rest of us up together. So that's amazing. Why don't you share with the listeners, how do the parents get their teenagers be part of this global teams meeting that you set up?
Sure, it's actually very simple. We have a certain registration process, which is just contacting the organizers, sending an email and saying, my child or my student would like to attend. And then right now we're using a platform called Classin, which is a China-based platform, but they work worldwide. And they were kind enough to cooperate with us to provide the platform for free through some of our China partners. And the platform is basically just for online classes. So there is a Blackboard, there are some very cool tools there that we use that don't exist in Zoom or Skype, because the purposes for the platforms were different. And as long as the child has this account in Classin, they can join. But of course, they have to tell us first, so they can reach out via email or WeChat or Facebook to me, and we'll just add them to the group. It's that simple.
Fantastic. We will definitely add on to the show notes later on all the registration process and where to find you. Fantastic,
Thank
Margarita.
you. Thank you so much. This is just to mention the age group, because we focus specifically on teenagers.
Yes.
It's from approximately 9 years old to 15 years old. So if it's plus minus a year, that's okay. But of course, we are open to accepting anyone who's willing to try, and then they can see if this is something that they can follow, they enjoy the topics, they just stay, right?
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure the listeners are all taking notes right now. Thank you so much, Margarita.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Margarita, it's a wonderful conversation we had so far. Really like to hear from you with all those challenges and the things that you have to overcome and still going through some of those challenges. What are the key lessons that you have learned so far, and would you be able to share with us?
Oh, I love that question. Key lessons. Okay. We're talking about education, right?
Yeah.
Everything that happens kind of leads us to some realizations and
reflection and realization.
Yeah, right. So for me personally, as a person who moved to another country and city, and we don't really have any friends here. We have a couple of friends, but we had to stay indoors. Same goes for so many other people around the world, right? Staying indoors, whether you have friends or not in the city, was not that important. But I would say that finding the balance, again, because it's not like you find a balance once in life and it works for the rest of your life, but finding a balance in this new challenging situation was the main lesson I learned. That covers the areas I mentioned before, such as emotional state of mind, right? what do I pay attention to? Did I block myself from the news, for example? No, I love to know the facts. I love to accept them because they might not be very pleasant, but they give us the information we need to decide what to do next. So staying updated on the news, while at the same time kind of detoxing emotionally. By talking with my friends and family, by watching specific movies that make me relaxed, by eating healthy. So maintaining the lifestyle that would help my body and my mind to stay relaxed within the conditions that we have on hands. That was something that I just had to find my way towards again in the new setting. And talking to friends helped a lot, of course. Talking online with the friends in China first who were going through the situations we went through later, giving support to them helped a lot later for myself. Basically, whatever we were discussing with them, we were applying ourselves in a couple of months in Germany. Yeah. And
no, I was just about to say, because friends in China would have gone through the experiences much earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the one thing about the friends in China that I have, they're very particular and also very specific as to what can be done, what cannot be done. So I myself learned so much from my friends in China. What are the best practices to do and what's not so good to do? And because as the initial stages, there's not much procedure, right? Even in Singapore, the initial stages, we are all left to figure out on our own. Only at a much later stage, the government comes in and help to put things under control. So I think that really helped me personally too.
Yes, I feel the same way, even though we went through everything even later than you guys. But overall, keeping close touch with China while people here in Germany were not even aware of a possibility to have to go through that here as well. It helped a lot, me and my husband, when we were already in this situation. We were kind of mentally, I wouldn't say prepared, you can't be prepared for this, but we were adjusted a little bit mentally, and that helped a lot. That's true.
The awareness is there, at least the awareness is there.
Yeah, exactly. Awareness to begin with, knowing some facts, and also knowing how people dealt with the situation in China. Having some tips from them was very good. And just adjusting the lifestyle, to having a healthy mind, healthy body kind of approach. And from the work point of view, what I learned is no matter how long or how often you work from home, and I have been doing it a lot in the last 2 years specifically, there is always a room for improvement. There is always a room to becoming even more agile, even more, okay with whatever you don't have control over. So it absolutely, it's the situation that targets all the areas of our life, this new norm, and even the areas where you think that you are actually good at already because you've been doing it for a while, such as working from home. It takes off on a new form, a new shape for
completely.
you.
Exactly. I agree with you.
Because it's not your choice anymore to work from home. It's still a need, and there is a shift in this mental perception of what makes you work from home. So agility, mental agility, I would say, is the main lesson that I've learned, that no matter how good you are at it, you have to keep on improving it and keep on adjusting yourself.
I like that. Mental agility, that is so precise. It's exactly what we all need to do. Really mentally agile, right? To face anything that comes along our way. We need to switch gear if we need to, or accelerate or slow down or change side of things, or doing the way we do things. We have to maybe kind of like tweak a bit. So we need to be agile in our mind in order to do that. So I like that, mental agility. Thank you, Margarita.
And I would say there is also one more thing that I believe became quite clear, as we have discussed with you already, this emotional roller coaster we've been going through. But the key lesson here is that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And it's absolutely normal for us to go through these roller coasters, especially during COVID-19, but also through other situations in life, right? So as long as we maintain creation of this and fostering of healthy relationships with people around us, whether it's offline or online, in the same city or a country or not, that can help a lot to go through these times. So
Absolutely.
just being okay with not being okay, and also keep on talking about these feelings and situations with your loved ones. It's very important.
I like it. It's okay to be not okay. It's going to be my tagline for some time now. Thank you, Margarita. I love
for
it.
many of us.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very true, and I agree. Well, thank you. So, Margarita, we are in the education industry, and clearly, even though we work a lot from home previously, and you say with COVID-19, it's kind of forced us to do things differently in a very short period of time. How did COVID-19 change the education industry? And in your views, what are the changes that may take place post COVID-19?
Right. So there are so many benefits and at the same time downsides of how COVID-19 influenced the education industry. I will start with the benefits first.
Sure.
The tech usage, of course, has brought education to a totally new level. Now, if before you would talk to a school or an educator and say, this course is happening online, or there is this tool online that you can use, they would just say, yeah, it's amazing, but we're already doing this. Yep. And what they are doing is, of course, offline. And they would just not have to use those tools. Whereas now that we've gone through COVID-19 for quite a while already, these educators, the same people, the same schools, they were forced to use technology to a certain extent. And the result of this is actually quite significant for the education industry, because even though they might not love technology so much, or they might still believe that there has to be a certain percentage of offline, online approach, which I absolutely agree with, yet the first step has been taken, and this wall between teachers and educators and schools and parents and students as well, and between them and between technology has started to break down and fall. So I would say that this is a very significant, important moment for education, because there is no such thing as would you like to use technology. There is such thing as we have to use it, and here it is. Figure out how to use it, and we'll just roll with that. Of course, all that brings us to the downside, which is the lack of training how to use technology, lack of professional development for teachers, how to adapt to these new ways of conducting classes or creating curriculum even for the online lessons. So I've heard of a lot of schools around the world, even in the developed countries, that just decided to use technology in the very basic and primitive, I would say, way, where they take pictures, let's say, of the assignment, which is printed out on the paper. Maybe it was prepared before COVID-19. Maybe they have printers at home. I don't know. And then, or they send, if they have the file digitally, they just send the file digitally to students. And students have to just do their work offline, let's say, write down or type their answers and take a picture of their answers or whatever they have created and send it back to the teacher. And after that, there is no communication between them. So these kind of approaches have been quite common in a lot of public schools around the world, which is also quite understandable, because if teachers don't know how to use technology in the most beneficial way for them and for the students, nobody gives them a training. There is no professional development on this, because everything was happening so fast, right, during COVID-19.
Exactly.
There was no even space to do that. So everybody was in a hurry and we had to adapt. So everybody adapted in a different way. But even having this approach, which is not the best when we have great technology available for education, it was still better than having the classes offline as before, because it still helped teachers and schools and students to kind of shift their mindset a little bit towards, okay, we are at least using our computers more, right? And maybe looking for some apps or websites or more resources. So there is this mix of positivity in the education world when it comes to finally taking education to the next level, more connection to technology, and at the same time, lack of training and support for those teachers and for the schools.
Yeah, I think those that you mentioned are really what we see that is happening now, isn't it? And those, if we can acknowledge that these are the challenges that we face and these are the things that we have to take forward for the future, for the benefit of all, I really think this will be an area that we all can shine over time. Yeah, it takes time to develop, of course.
Absolutely. And now it's actually a very good chance situation for the whole education industry to jump, to make this leap forward, as compared to ever before. So I really hope that a lot of institutions would continue to develop in this area. At the same time, I also hope that governments and companies and NGOs continue to also focus on the countries and regions where there is no access to the internet, or maybe there are not enough devices in the families. Because of the economic situation in the country, families cannot afford it, or maybe there is lack of education in this area as well. Because as long as we continue to develop in the technology aspect, we will also continue to grow the digital divide between those people who are connected and who are not. So it's kind of a reminder for us as well. But at the same time, it's just the new norm that we're talking about in the education is all about including technology in education. And if there are countries, there are schools, and there are families who do not have access to technology, then what are we even talking about, right?
Exactly.
This is the first step that has to be taken.
And this is so true where the disparity, as you say, the gap is really big. So we really have to acknowledge that the gap is there, the disparity is there. And how do we then address this as a next step to bring everyone on the same level so that everyone has access to the learnings as we continue to transform in the education industry?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margarita. I really like that discussion. And I believe we can touch base again in the next 6 months to 9 months or even a year and see how this progress. And I'm sure we have a lot to chat here. I look forward to that.
That would be great.
I look forward to that. Fantastic. Well, Margarita, I know you are going through a lot right now, but is there any new normal that you are going through, and would you be able to share that with us?
So the new normal for me personally? Good question. I like your questions today, specifically because they are not just about the situation here and there, but they also aimed at how personal lives have changed and how we're feeling.
Exactly, because we really feel that COVID-19 has actually touched all of us in many areas, both professionally and also personally. And these two parts, even though it's in us, professional and also personal, but I find that the personal part, if we address that well, the professional part will actually follow through accordingly. But the personal part is something that sometimes we kind of forget or kind of neglect maybe.
Yeah.
And I like it when you talk about healthy mind, healthy body, and you really take a conscious effort to look into that and follow through in detoxing, in relaxing, whether it's talking to friends or watching TV. It's so enlightening to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that we do tend as people to neglect specific areas of our personal development, and we tend to put professional development or somebody else first just because it's easier. But actually it's true that the sooner we start working on ourselves and keep on developing personally, the easier it will be to develop other areas of life. And this is why I'm thinking that my new normal would be this term of emotional agility. Even though, personal development, professional development, any kind of growth has always been my mantra along the way of life. But now, because of COVID-19, it has really become the norm for me to, no matter what happens, no matter what news come, no matter how many, what are the numbers and what are the statistics showing around the world, it's all about me accepting those facts and at the same time deciding how to react to this. And that's why this mental agility, I believe, would be the base for anything else that comes afterwards.
Very well said. And I like that mental agility. It is so important and so true. So thank you. Thank you, Margarita, for sharing that. Your new normal is really very powerful. And I'm glad you shared this at SkyGems podcast, where all our listeners could listen in and also learn from you, and also all of us can benefit from here. So thank you.
Yes, I'm actually talking to a lot of people who were going through a lot of challenges professionally as well, because they either lost their jobs or they had to restructure their organization. I'm talking about China specifically, but I'm pretty sure it was the same in other countries as well. And it makes me very happy to see that majority of people also get to the point where they focus more on their mental state. Eventually, right, they come to realize that, okay, no matter what happens, I still have my health, I still have my family, and I can find a new job eventually. I can work on this. This is going to work out. It will just take time. So it does show people the importance of focusing on oneself first and what state they are in first.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Margarita, for sharing that. Well, Margarita, now we come to the very important part of the SkyGems podcast. We would like to hear from you. What would your messages be for the future generations?
Another great question.
I'm glad you love that. Thank you so much.
We do focus a lot. I mean, I personally and everyone I work with, we focus on, how can we prepare the next generations and future generations for creating the world they would actually enjoy living in. And I would say that, especially during these times, I would focus on this message. They have to stay flexible. You have to stay flexible. You have to learn skills, and not just knowledge, but also skills and approaches along with the knowledge. You have to be empathetic, of course, and you have to keep on questioning and challenging whatever comes your way, whether from outside or from inside. Keep your eyes and minds open and see beyond the modern world of consumerism and living for yourself, for your community or country. There are so many more things outside of those borders, and there are many people in the world that also need more support than we can ever imagine. Talking about basic human rights, which is education and food, right?
Yes.
By the way, I didn't mention before, but food is also one of the biggest issues of not having schools open in so many countries. Kids don't get enough nutrition at home. And nutrition, as we know, is the first step towards education, because that's how our brains start to work. We have energy in our body for learning. So if there is no food, there is no learning. So please, for the next generations, my message would be to look outside of this comfort zone and outside of the society set norms or the modern capitalism set norms, right? And see beyond that. Also, in terms of technology, do not just develop technology, but support the countries and regions and people who do not even have the basic luxury of having access to technology. So along the way of developing science and technology, which is absolutely important, we also have to look at the real life of people who do not have access to that technology, because that nowadays stops them from having access to educating themselves. And if there is no education, there is no bright future. We all know that it affects economy and other areas of life. So support people around you, and this, I believe that this kind of approach would help to equalize the world.
Margarita, thank you so much. That is a very powerful and very meaningful message that you have delivered to the future generations. And I'm very
a long one.
I took notes on this. It's really so powerful. Food is the first step to education, and I truly believe in that. They talk about see beyond your own comfort zone, and I think that is so true. They talk about stay flexible, right? Mental agility, as you spoke earlier on, is definitely one key area that we all have to learn this skill. If you are not there yet, we need to get there, and if you're there, how to sharpen it further, and also learn skills and approaches that will bring you towards different way of doing things and different way of thinking. I think that is the key to all this, right? And
yes,
with COVID-19, it really pushes out of our norm in every aspects. And I think really it shows us that if we want to, and if we are willing to, we can do this internally as a person, as well as bring the people along, bring the community along with us, and lift everyone up together as a community.
As a community. Very well put.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Margarita. It's such a wonderful session today, and I really enjoyed our podcast episode for today at SkyGems Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode as well, and I'm sure our listeners truly benefit from here, and I'm sure they will be enjoying the session. It is our finale, episode 40 for SkyGems Podcast Series 1, which is entitled How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry. We will have further podcast sessions moving forward, but for this particular series, it's ending with you, Margarita, and it's such a powerful message that you've given to all of us. So the finale is an amazing one. Thank you, Margarita.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation and your questions and the conclusions that we come to together as we all notice here. They're actually a combination of our experiences, right? So just by this conversation, we confirm that there is so much more that we can do together as a community, as a group of people, as opposed to one person only. So I really appreciate what you do, putting together all these great talks and people and ideas and sharing it with more people. Absolutely support that, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Margarita. You have a wonderful day ahead in Berlin, and I look forward to seeing you again, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day in Singapore as well.
You too, Margarita. Thank you.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode at SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 on the topic of how COVID-19 transformed the education industry. If you enjoyed today's episode and you love the vision and mission of SkyGems Academy, can you please help us to convince others to tune in to SkyGems Academy Podcast too? Please kindly subscribe to SkyGems Academy Podcast. Please also kindly leave a quick review and rate SkyGems Academy Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor.fm, Breaker, and various SkyGems Academy's podcast channels. That would mean the world to us, so thank you so much for your support. Visit our website at www.skygemsacademy.com to find out more about our distinguished speakers and about SkyGems Academy. We appreciate you and your continuous support. Thank you for tuning in to SkyGems Academy Podcast. High five and peace out!